Okay, so your bell ringer said that imagine if all the birds around the school are dying, how might you investigate the problem? And then I asked you to write a brief description of your investigation and which stages of the scientific investigation are represented in your answers. Let's see what you guys came up with. So a lot of people are still writing them in. That's fine. I'm going to actually pop down here so that it doesn't keep rolling on me. So make observations and form a hypothesis as to why they're all dying. Okay, that's not detailed but general. Oh, there we go. You could gather? Okay, good. I didn't know. I was thinking alligator. Get an alligator. So you could gather all of the birds and dissect them, two S's there, to see if they all ate something in common or inhaled something. And then you can make observations. So I like the dissecting them because I like to cut stuff off. This is the anatomy room, right? This is where we dissect cats. Yeah. Don't worry, it's only like 16 of them. Well, imagine if everybody had their own, then it'd be like 32 of them. So I would see the predators, okay, are around the school capable of eating a bird. Oh, look for predators. I like that one. I'm just going to grab them randomly. Go around and collect a bunch of birds. Oh, you guys are morbid. You want to cut these things up. All right. Investigate nearby plant. Well, yeah, see if there's a poisonous berry out there. I like it. So I see a lot of observations, what they're eating, drinking, okay? And then I see you guys coming up with a possible problem. And then I see you, well, didn't quite get to maybe a solution to the problem, but why the problem is happening is forming a hypothesis. Yes?
I was just going to have like a suggestion. If the school is running on a new form of fuel or something, the smokers gave off, that might have killed the birds?
Check to see if they're huffing the fumes on top of the building, right? Okay. We all know birds are high anyway, right?
Yeah, like that demonstration.
Yeah. You guys, I've got a lot of bad jokes. There's one. I've got more. Don't worry. Okay. All right, good way to start. So today we're going to be looking at the scientific investigation and how it begins. We'll look at the two methods that scientists use to test hypotheses, and we'll look at the difference between a theory and a hypothesis. So part of today is going to be me having you break down what is called a controlled experiment as well, which you may or may not have done in the past. So most scientific investigations begin with observations that lead to questions. Everybody should be filling out their notes. An observation is the act of noting or perceiving objects or events using the senses. We all have five senses. We know that. We see, we hear, we touch, we feel, and we taste. Although generally tasting things in science is not a good idea, or smelling them usually. Okay. So to answer a question, scientists first formulate a hypothesis that leads to scientific investigation. What is a hypothesis? It is a possible explanation, not just a possible explanation, but it must be able to be tested. Okay, you can't just make something up that you cannot test in science. If you can't test it, it's not science, it's something else. The password, who knows the password? Oh, I'll go back. Hold on. I know what it is. It's Tom Pow, or without O. TOMPW. What is it? Oh, they didn't put the acronym up there. So it must be testable. Oh, I'm not going to play that one. So an experiment is a procedure that is carried out under controlled conditions to test a hypothesis. Now, a controlled experiment tests one factor at a time and uses a control group and an experimental group. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. Now, a control group is a group that serves as a standard for comparison in an experiment, whereas the experimental groups are identical to the control group except for one factor that we call the variable. Now, we are going to be doing several problems, maybe a little bit at the end of the hour today, but definitely tomorrow, where I give you a few situations, and you're going to have to build a controlled experiment out of them. Now, the single factor that scientists change in an experiment is called the independent variable. Can there ever be more than one of these in an experiment? Can we ever have more than one independent variable? No. Okay? So the factors that may change in response to the independent variable are called the dependent variable. And scientists analyze changes to the dependent variable in order to understand how the independent variable affects the system that they are studying. I'm going to ask you guys a question. How many of you think, let me restate that. If I make this statement, changing the amount of light a plant gets will determine how its leaves change color. Changing the amount of light that a plant gets changes the leaf's color. Now, I don't care whether or not that's a true statement or a false statement. Is it a testable statement? Yes or no? Please tell me. Okay, it is testable. I could adjust light, right? There's two things here that you're looking at. The amount of light and changing the leaf color. If you think that the amount of light is the independent variable, give me a thumbs up. If you think it's not, give me a thumbs down. Okay. Now there's the other thing called the dependent variable, right? How many people think that the light is the dependent variable, thumbs up, that the leaf color is the dependent variable, thumbs down? Some of you are just leaving it on thumbs up and kind of in the middle. Okay. So anytime I give two variables that you guys are confused, some of you, that's okay. This is a good point of confusion to find you at because those two words sound similar, independent and dependent. Dependent starts with what letter of the alphabet? D. Data. What does data start with? D. That's how I remember. The dependent variable is going to show me the data. And that will change, so it's a variable. Because for the control group, I'm going to have one set of data, and for the experimental group, I'm going to have another set of data. But they both change, so they're variables. But the one thing I'm testing is the amount of light, right? And that was the independent variable. Does that make sense? So if you're ever confused as to which variable you're looking for, just remember that the dependent variable, I'm going to pop through that the dependent variable is, we're going to do some problems for those, but the dependent variable is the data that you're looking at. Now there are often cases in which experiments are not possible or ethical. We talked about bioethics. We can't just do experiments on people. We can't clone humans. We can't experiment on with drugs that are unknown or give one group drugs and the other one not drugs. So in these cases, researchers perform studies. So if I want to find out the effects of TB, tuberculosis, on a deer population, I don't want to infect the deer with TB. I go study them that are getting TB, right? I go to where the TB is. So in a study, researchers gather data about a system by making observations rather than by manipulating the independent variables. So if I want to, let's say, count all of the leaves in the forest, should I go out with a sack and pull all the leaves off the trees in the woods? No. But I can study them, right? Okay, I can go out and count them, and then if I want to look at how leaves are changing color, I can study that too. But can I control everything outside? No. So most things in the environment are studies. They're not going to be these isolated, controlled experiments. And that'll become more clear as we go through a few problems today. So after conducting an experiment, researchers analyze the results to learn whether the results support their hypothesis or not, and they draw conclusions that explain the results of their experiments. Now, you've probably seen the scientific method in every science class you've had since you were, how old? What do you think? Somewhere in 11. I hear 11. That sounds about right. Okay, 10, 11 years old. So you should not be a stranger to this process by now, I'm hoping. So, but that whole telling the difference between the two types of variables, that's kind of not new, but new in the high school world. So scientists vary their conclusions by conducting their experiments many times and then check to see if the other scientists have found similar results. If I cure cancer, should I be able to repeat it? Yeah, otherwise I didn't cure cancer, right? Okay, because there's more than one person with it. So you have to be able to repeat science as well. I had a flow chart in there. My images aren't coming into Pear Deck, which is getting me a little worried. So every person has his or her own point of view. A particular point of view, is what is called a bias. Everybody in the room, I ask you a question. How many people, actually, how about this? Why don't you guys type in your favorite flavor of ice cream? Tell me your favorite ice cream flavor. Blue Moon, Moose Tracks. Blue Mold? Mold. Rocky Road, vanilla, mint chocolate chip. Chocolate chip cookie, wild sherbet. Wild sherbet, I haven't had that. Wild sherbet. Is that the multi-rainbow sherbet flavor? Blue Moon? Superman. Oh, I like me some Superman. Who's Superman? Yep, I'm with you there. You know what? Here's a confession of Mr. Mason. You guys want to hear my obsession with Superman ice cream? Because that'd be mine if I typed it in. I went to school at Ferris State University. Grand Rapids was the closest place that sold Superman ice cream. So me and my wife, before she was my wife, this was like a date. This is ridiculous. We would drive. It's about a 40-minute drive to get Superman ice cream and then drive back. This was before gas was really expensive, by the way. So I'm old. Isn't that weird? What's Dutch cake batter from Dutch Village? Butter, I like butter pecan too, that's pretty good. Spaghetti, all right, now you're getting silly. All right. Superman. Play-Doh, I gotta go down, okay. So, sea salt caramel truffle, that just sounds good. All right, so why do this? So not one of you really, well, a few of you put the same one, but our bias is what we think, right? It's what we already have in our head. If somebody offered me $1 million to develop a drug that, let's say, cured cancer, and I did, but it also killed you in 5 years, would I be very tempted to, let's say, release that drug or get that drug out there and maybe throw out the few people that did die in my research? Maybe not die. Die is pretty drastic. But I'd be tempted, right? Because they gave me an incentive. That's a bias, right? What I believe, what I think, what I am motivated by. Yes? Don't worry about those. Those were image files. My images didn't come in for some reason. So. Oh, you didn't have time? Oh, I'm sorry. Which one? Tell me. You know what? I'm going to have you come back to that in a little bit. I'll do that at the end, okay? So scientists try to prevent bias from affecting their work, but bias can still influence an experiment, okay? Just like if you have me run experiments, like I said, and you offer me money to do it as an incentive, I have an incentive to throw out these outliers, so to speak. Do drug companies offer their chemists incentives to develop new drugs? Yes, that's why we have drugs that come out that have all these like listed side effects, because they're all in this race to get these things out, even though there is quite a few disclaimers on a lot of them. So sources of funding, personal involvement in a product, and other conflicts of interest can affect an experiment. So if we had to go, if our job was to find out who or what the best ice cream was, we all in here have a bias already, right? Mine's Superman. I don't care. I have never understood chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream. It's disgusting.
How do you say that?
That's my own bias. I'm dead serious. That's the way I feel about it. I'm like, I don't want to eat raw cookie. I understand baking the cookie and then putting the ice cream in it, but not the raw stuff. Come on now. Cook it first. But is that a bias? That's my bias. If I was in charge of this, cookie dough wouldn't even be on the list. See what I mean? So now imagine I'm a scientist and I have a motivation in a certain direction, and it's not ice cream I'm talking about. It's, let's say, money, right? And this person's offering me money, but they don't have the best idea, and this person's not offering me money and they have a better idea. I might go with the guy who's giving me money, right? So it is wise to view all scientific claims in their context and to think critically about them. Understand who's speaking to you and what their biases are. I would say the same thing about a politician. Whenever I listen to a politician, doesn't matter what side they're on, I always say, what do they have to benefit out of what is coming out of their mouth? Usually, what they say is only going to benefit them. Okay? And so, always viewing things in their bias and in their context helps a lot. We did that one already. All right. So in science, a theory, what? You want me to go back to our responses? No? Okay. I will. That happens. If that happens, I don't need to know about it. Just either log back in or look on your neighbors. We're working through some technical connection issues right now. So in science, a theory is a system of ideas that explains many related observations and is supported by a larger body of evidence. So a theory, is a theory just one proven hypothesis? That's the question. What do you guys think? Can I have a theory? How about this? I'll poll you. Yes or no? Can I have a theory with one experiment, one proven hypothesis? Can I develop a theory from that? Even if I can repeat it 1,000,000 times. Can I have a theory from one experiment or one proven hypothesis? If the leaves, if I change the amount of light, my leaves will change color. That is a true, provable statement. Can I get a theory from that? Will that alone give me a theory? That's the question. Yes or no? I hear some yeses and I hear some no. Well, I'm going to stop this and go back. All right? So how about this? The theory, one of the most controversial biological theories, the theory of evolution. Do you think that was developed from one experiment? Probably not. So that's a theory, millions of experiments, right, to support one unifying theory. Okay. Strangely enough, it is the one of the few theories that has never been disproven, which is kind of creepy. It's because everybody just tried to prove it wrong so many times. It stood sort of the test of time because of that. And really, in science, the theory of evolution is not that controversial. It's only when you start talking about human evolution people get all crazy. So, in here, we don't even need to do that. We'll just talk about how like viruses evolve and bacteria evolve. We'll talk a little bit about human evolution, but not much. Not much. So the main difference between a theory and a hypothesis is that a hypothesis is a specific testable prediction for a limited set of conditions, and a theory is a general explanation for a broad range of data, and even in parentheses you might want to put many hypotheses proven, okay? Many different sets of experiments. So constructing a theory often involves considering contrasting ideas and conflicting hypotheses. The best way to prove something right is to try to prove it wrong over and over and over again. The strongest theories in science are the ones that are the most controversial. And that is because so many people have tried to prove them wrong. So if the results of a scientific experiment can be reproduced many times, the research may help develop a new theory. We have string theory right now, right? Or the multiverse. Who's heard of these things? Yeah, these are new theories. It's hard to find new theories in biology because it's life. We've studied it for so long. Now, like in these quantum physics topics, we do have these new developing theories out there. But future research may cause a theory to be revised or even rejected. So we used to think the world was flat, right? And that went away. We sailed around it. Okay. We used to think that the sun was the center of the universe, and then this guy named, Galileo, but even before him there was, what's wrong with me? Aristotle. And then there's one more too. I can't remember the other guy's name that I was really trying to think of. No, it wasn't Plato. That's a philosopher. But looking at the idea that the Earth is not the center of the universe was huge, right? For millions of years, that's what they thought. Well, maybe not millions, thousands. So by investigating and challenging theories, scientific understanding grows. The future research may cause a theory to be rejected, and that's okay. I hope we learn something new tomorrow. I don't want stagnant brains running the planet. If that's the case, we're all going to be underwater in about 30 years, right? But I think we're smarter than that. We're going to learn new things. What if we just kept doing the Industrial Revolution and didn't control anything? We'd be so polluted right now we wouldn't be able to even live. And we did put environmental laws into place after the Industrial Revolution. Okay. What? Oh dear, now you're asking me kind of history stuff. That's okay. That's okay. I'm going to say it went somewhere. Oh, I'm going to have to look it up. I don't even want to spit a date out because I'll be embarrassed because I'll be wrong. Okay. Yep, go ahead. You can look it up right now. Tell us all. I'm one of those guys that does not care about dates so much as more as what happened. Now, most scientific investigations begin with the observations that lead to questions. Scientists can conduct controlled experiments, which we're going to look at in detail here in a minute, to perform studies in order to test a hypothesis. And that main difference between a theory and a hypothesis is a hypothesis is a specific, testable prediction for a limited set of conditions, while a theory is a general explanation for a very broad range of data. All right, so I'm going to send our recording off to the processor.